Okay, guys. So for this walkthrough, we're going to go through um, DOM objects. What are DOM objects? Well, let's go ahead and look them up. DOM objects. What are they? DOM objects stands for the Document Object Model. Now, this is going to seem a little different than what we're kind of used to, because when we're looking at our code, we don't really think in terms of this, but for actual web pages, we have a web page and we can access different things in that. So P5JS uses these object models for us to be able to actually do a lot of things and take input from the user, not just mouse clicks and keys pressed, but we could actually take text. We could actually have them slide values. So we're going to kind of go through a bunch of those. I'll walk through some examples, and then we can kind of see what they are. So if I click on DOM, we have them right here. Now, most of them that we're going to be talking about, they're all going to begin with the create. So like create a slider, create a button, create a checkbox, create a radio button, create a color picker. So that one's pretty cool. Create input. So if we wanted to, actually be able to type something, we could even create, say, a file input where they could load, say, an image, and then you could have stuff happen to it. So these are all things that we could use that would actually access the page. Okay, so let's start with one. So let's go ahead and we're going to create an object. Okay, so let's say let object, and we know that we're going to do one, and I'm going to do it for, let's say, color. Color picker. Okay, so my object, is going to end up having various values to it. I'm going to have an X. Let's say we'll just width divided by 2. I'm going to have a Y, and we're going to say it's height divided by 2. I'm going to have a size, and we're going to say that that is, let's just do width divided by 2. Okay. So we know that we can display this, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's write another one. We can call it display. And what do we want to display? We want to display the shape. So let's just do circle. Well, we're going to have some type of fill. And here that we're going to want to pick. And we are going to want to end up having, let's say, a circle. Circle with, man, I can't type today. This.x, this.y, this.size. Okay, so this fill, let's look at the color picker one. I think that one's a very easy one to understand. Okay, so what is it? It gives us a little bar. Okay, this color picker we could click. We could select a color. Anything that we want, and that's what we can use. We can use this color picker to have, say, a default color, and we store it the same as a variable of what we've done before. We can position it where we want, and then the color picker we can actually use to set colors. So that's pretty cool. We can do this if we wanted, say, the color picker to mix colors or do any of that stuff. We can use those as different values that we could do. So, they're going a little bit more in depth, but they're taking those values for it. So the color picker, it is going to end up giving you, and this is where we got to actually kind of pay attention to what we're looking at. It's going to give you a color. Okay. So we can input we can actually pull the color. We could also pull I believe we can pull the value too. We don't really want to use that. Okay, we can pull the color though on it, and it's going to actually be a color element. So here, let's do color picker. So just so that we can see that stuff is running, let's go ahead and I'm just going to make this white. And then I'm going to make this black. Let's run. Nothing happened because I have to call the display for my object. Object.display. Now let's go ahead and do it. There it is. Okay, so now I want to implement this color picker. So color picker, and I'm setting this exactly how I see here. Okay, color picker is create color picker. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, there it is. I want to give it maybe a different default color. If I don't give it anything, let's see what happens. It's just going to default to black. I'm okay with that. Okay, but just because I have this and I pick a color, it's not going to do anything. All right, so I want it actually to be able to change color. So in the example that we've seen that we could pull that color. So we could say color picker dot color. Let's look at, notice it's a function that we're pulling. So color picker like this. Let's make sure undefined is an invalid, undefined is an invalid color mode. Line 20 and sketch. Probably because I didn't give it a color. So let's see if we give it that color. Let's give it a color and see if that, because that would be the initial color that it has. Yep. So it errors out if you don't give it a color, because when it's trying to do the background, because this happens 60 times a second, this is actually firing even when I have no color in here. So I could change the colors of my background without having to rechange or type anything. So that's kind of cool. Let's create another one. So let's do color picker 2, and we'll create it the same way. So color picker 2 equals create color picker. And let's give it a different value. So if I wanted to give some type of value for it, I could just type color picker and look up something. Let's say I want to give it blue as my default. Okay, so I could give it this hex code right here, copy it, and come back and paste it in. Make sure I finish with semicolons. Okay, and then let's say that I wanted to fill it here. So this is color picker 2. Sounds good. Now I have another shape. Oh, what's happening? I got an error. It's not a valid color representation. Because I can't say color picker 2, that's an object. I need to say dot color. And it's a function, so double parentheses. Let's rerun again. Okay, there it is. Let's go ahead and change the color. Ooh. Okay, so we are able to change our colors and do some other stuff with it. So now we got 2 color pickers, okay? Those are pretty easy. Let's see now if we can implement some sliders for the X and Y, okay? I don't really need to change these positions, okay? So let's go back and we want to look at sliders. That's another really good one to do because we can use the sliders for adjusting color scales. You could use it for adjusting position. That's all kind of cool. So let's go ahead and create them. Now, the thing that's different is that this is pulling the value, not the color. And there's certain things that we have to put in here. We have to put, because it's a slider, I have to give it the range, okay? So the minimum value for the range, the maximum value for the range, what value I want it to maybe start at, that's an optional one. And if I want it to step in small increments, I could do that too. So I could give it, step every 1 or every 2 or every 5 for dragging it. So those are two optional things. At the very least, I have to give it a min and a max. I usually like to give it a min and a max and a starting value. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to end up creating 2. So let's do let x slider and let y slider. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and create those. So x slider is create slider. And again, we have to give it its starting value. So I'm going to use my x slider to position for the x. So I'm going to use it where the smallest value that it could be, so 0, and the largest value that it could be would be the width. I think that would be good. And then maybe I want it to move in steps of 10. Okay, and then y slider. I'm going to do create slider. Let's do another one. So this would be 0 and height. And I want to do it in steps of 10. Okay. Now, even though I have this, it's not going to do anything. So let's actually give this a default position. So this would be width divided by 2. So when I'm looking at this is my start. This is my minimum value that I can have for my x, my maximum value that I can have for my x. This is my starting value, and it's incrementing, or it's moving in steps of 10. So let's do that here. This would be height divided by 2. Okay, so now if I do these values, so x slider dot value, and I pull like this, and y slider dot value. Let's go ahead and run. There's my sliders. Oh, well, nothing's happening. And that's not actually because I set the sliders up incorrectly. Okay? What actually is the issue is that when I created the object, it only took what the current position of the sliders were when I created the object. So if I want to update this, I have to take what the current position of the slider is after I slide it. So to do that, I'm going to have to create another function, and I'm going to have to basically say this dot x is the x slider dot value, and this dot y is the y slider dot value. Okay, let's go ahead and save. Let's run. Now, still didn't happen. Why? Because I never actually called that function inside here. So let's go ahead and call it object.update. Now we can move it. So we're probably going to want to do another one for size. That one's going to be an implementation for you guys. But now we can color, and we can color the background. And we use the slider. So now let's make actually a text that is displaying inside here based off of what they type. Okay, so we're going to want to do a different one. So let's go and look at another DOM object. So that would be create input. And here we can see that they're creating the input just like what we did before. And we haven't talked about position and size yet. We can do that. We are going to do that. But we can take the actual input of what they're typing. So this creates an input element in the DOM for text input, uses size to set the value. So we can type. Okay. So We want to pull what that's saying, though. And that would be that object itself, the value. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do the create input. And when we're looking in here, it is saying that this could be the value or the value and the type. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that. Let's create an input. And let's, I don't know, call it greeting. And we're going to create another one. And this is going to be greeting is create input. And I can leave it blank. Say I just put greeting on there. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and try to get those values. So we, in our display, actually want to display on top of the circle some text. So we're going to do that in terms of, let's play around with this.x, this.y, this, and then what we want it to say. So I'm going to say greeting. Greeting. Okay, now this should have issues because we're going to have to end up pulling what the greeting is. Let's give this maybe another attribute. Well, let's try this. So I don't see anything here. Greeting dot value. Yep, because I believe it has to update. So we're going to create another attribute, and let's say we call it text. That's not going to be a good name. Let's just call it greet, and this would be the greeting.value. And then we're going to actually have to update this. So this.greet is greeting.value. That should probably work. Okay, so sometimes when things don't work, then what we got to do is we got to check. Console.log is very good because that's going to display stuff down here. And you can use this to pull things. So I can see what is that greeting.value. Is it actually displaying anything? Okay, so this, if I type hello, it's actually picking that up. Okay, so it's there. That's what that greeting.value is. So I'm not pulling this.greeting anymore. That was my mistake. It's this.greet. Let's run it again. Hello. Let's make sure that this has it now. This.greet. Greeting. Now it's got hello. So this.x, this.y, there might be some issues with the order. So let's also do the text color. We can use fill, I think, for that. Fill. Let's make it white. Or let's make it the background. So that'd be color picker dot color. Run it again. There it is. Okay. And now I can say hello, and we get to display. Now it's moving with the stuff, but it's not really centered like what I want. So this, I should be able to actually get the length of this text. if I wanted to move it over. So I could say like this dot greet dot length, I think. Maybe it's size. Nope, definitely not size. Or I could just subtract some from it. So if I did, now these are hard numbers, so if it was a really big value, it's not moving it over. But maybe I want it, let's say I want it close to start at the start of the text. So that would be this dot size divided by 2. I'm taking that radius and moving it over. Check it out. Let's maybe put that text size, make that a little bit bigger. So let's make that 16. Oh, let's do bigger than that. How about 24? Okay, and then now when we change our text color, our background, we also get that too. Hello. We can move that over. That's pretty sweet. Okay. So, all right. For this walkthrough, you have created, and this is going to be your baseline project that you're going to play with. We have walked through the creation of the 2 color pickers, 2 sliders, and the create input. Okay. The only other thing that I haven't done that I'm going to do right now is show you how to position some of these. So I'm going to position this input up in, say, like the top left, and I can position these sliders like right underneath it. So I'm going to walk through that real quick. Okay. But for the next project that you're going to do, so you're going to turn in this, okay, what I have, and then you're going to implement additional sliders and different DOM objects. So I'm going to give you a list. Okay, so make sure that you're getting this correct. You're having it where it's operating exactly like mine. Let's go ahead and quickly position. Okay, so once we actually create our things, we can position them. So we can actually pull up. So the create input, that one, you know, we actually see where it gives position. Almost all of them have a dot position on them. Okay, so I can give it its X and Y. So I can call that object and call position, and then I can give it, you know, say a 0, 0, and that's going to go in the top left. Okay, now let's say that I'm going to position the X sliders and the Y sliders. So position the sliders underneath the input. Okay, so that's what I want to do. Okay, so then I can actually use whatever the width and height of this is to help me position my stuff. So let's do the X slider. X slider dot position, and I'm going to do 0 on the X, but on the Y I actually want whatever that greeting position is. So the greeting dot Y plus the greeting dot height. Okay, because that object itself has an actual height. If I didn't do this and I left it off, then I do have the slider. It's actually behind it. If I, did some hard values, 20, if I did 10, see how it's going behind? Okay, but if I did where I'm building this in terms of the height of that previous one, if I'm ever moving this down, this greeting down, then it's going to move that slider down with it. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with the Y slider. So Y slider dot position, and this one I'm going to position next to this slider. Okay, so I want it on here. I'm going to do the X slider dot X plus the X slider dot width. Okay, for my X position, And then I want my X slider height. That's where I want it to be. So X slider, because I want it to be the same height as the X slider. That looks weird. Let's do it in terms of the greeting. So greeting.y plus greeting.height. Okay, now it's lined up. All right, so now I have those two sliders. They still operate the same way. And I can type in here, okay? So that's the end for the walkthrough. This is the end, okay, for how to do it. So just to review, we have shown how to create several DOM objects, the document object models. So this affords us a lot more inputs that we can do for the user for our programs without having to re-click play to run this stuff, okay? Some of them will not update your objects unless you give it an update function to pull the current values. Okay, so you just need to be aware of that. And then we also went and looked at how to position, and we can position also in terms of these DOM objects, their individual y, x, and height and width, to position them so that we can move them around and everything stays locked how we want. Okay, so for this DOM object project, you guys need to have all of this code written up, correctly running with no errors. Okay, and I want to see that you guys have your console code. I want to see that console.log code in for the greeting here on line 39 to see that you guys are properly using the console.log code, because this is a good way to try to find errors if we have anything. All right, good luck. Have fun.